In the opening section of this chapter, I noted that Climate Crisis 101 is at once a book, YouTube channel, and an audio podcast series, a website, and a university course. In this section, I would like to draw attention to the fact that while Climate Crisis 101 is a lecture course and a book, it does things that are very unusual for either lectures or books. Let me begin by focusing on Climate Crisis 101 as a lecture. For hundreds of years, lectures have remained pretty much the same. For lecturers, this means standing at a podium and talking to a room full of people, usually from notes, which are now often bullet points projected on screen. From a student's perspective, it means you have a breakneck hour or so of feverishly trying to write down whatever seems important. With any luck, you can see and hear the lecturer. Okay, as this may well be the only time that you have access to the primary course material, this is very important. Though, now that we are in the 21st century, if you're lucky, you might just get a digital copy of those bullet points. It's also imperative that you are a fast and good note-taker. As you may have noticed, some lecturers never tire of repeating the importance of this particular skill. This emphasis on note-taking starts early, as students have studies have shown that middle school teachers use lecturers with note-taking about a third to one-half of the time in their content area courses. Unfortunately, for students with certain learning challenges, this could potentially set the stage for disaster. As far as I'm concerned, there has to be a more inclusive way that is better for everyone. One of the overarching themes of Climate Crisis 101 is that if we are to successfully mitigate the climate crisis, we need to make a significant change to our day-to-day practices. Technology is certainly important and instrumental here, but the simple fact is that technology alone is not enough, not by a long shot. We also need to change the way that we live and do things. This also applies to lectures. In this case, there are a range of technologies such as streaming video and audio that can be of great benefit if we are willing to accept the challenge of fundamentally rethinking the nature of a lecture and how we experience it. In taking up this gauntlet, I first considered a variety of ways of disseminating information, like books, YouTube channels, and audio podcast series. It soon became clear to me that each of these could succeed at the job of teaching new material, though each in different ways that might work especially well for certain people. When thinking about it, it occurred to me that a mashup of these approaches might make for an interesting and effective lecture series. Hence, Climate Crisis 101 is not your grandparents' lecture, as it was designed from the very beginning for both online presentation and to simultaneously exist in a variety of other forms, including as an ebook. As a book, Climate Crisis 101 is admittedly pretty odd, not just because it has website functionality, but because it places unusual demands on the reader. At the risk of stating the obvious, all that most books require of their readers is that you read them. Ideally, read them through to the end. True, they may reference other works like books or films, but generally you are not required to read or watch additional works as part of the reading experience. However, to be fully experienced, this book requires that you read and watch a variety of other works, which it elucidates and comments upon. It is possible to read this book without reading and watching these other works. However, as it is designed to frame and explicate this material, it's not possible to completely experience, perhaps even completely understand, Climate Crisis 101 without encountering these additional works. Climate Crisis 101 is also an unusual book by virtue of the fact that you can hear it narrated as you read. Currently, as far as I know, this feature is only available on Kindle audio ebooks via their WhisperSync technology. Hearing the book that you are reading can have real advantages for some learners, as it can help, you keep you focused. As was noted in, Inside Higher Education, and this is a quote from them, anyone who has ever tried WhisperSync knows how compelling the syncing of ebook and audiobook can be. Switching back and forth between your eyes and your ears brings momentum to your reading. A synced ebook audiobook creates a virtuous cycle of learning. You may want to read more because you are encouraged by how quickly you will read, a desire which causes you to read still more. It's the end of the quote. There are, incidentally, studies that back up the effectiveness of such what's generally called immersion reading. However, this can be an expensive option, as you are in essence paying for a book twice, once as an ebook and then as a recorded book. The Kindle edition of Naomi Klein's This Changes Everything, for example, costs $15, the audio version $30, for a total of $45. If you buy the two together, the combined total is discounted to $28. Still, that's a lot of money. In all of its various forms, Climate Crisis 101 is completely free of charge. Although the text is not highlighted as it is spoken, as with, WhisperSync, I personally prefer this approach. Without WhisperSync's somewhat annoying animation, the page just feels more like a book. At least it does for me. For certain people, immersion reading may be especially helpful. If English is not your first language, this might be a good opportunity to improve your English. In addition, for people like me who are dyslexic, hearing what we see on the page can often be really useful. However, as we all learn in our own ways, immersion reading could be a good option really for anyone. So feel free to give it a try. On a personal note, I very much like listening to books narrated. When I made my living as a furniture maker, I used to listen to books all the time while working. However, when I sit down to read a book, I often imagine that the author is speaking directly to me. It's just one of the ways that I enjoy getting into a book. The problem with most of the audio books that you buy is that the author is not the one who is doing the narrating, which can be a little, disappointing. However, with Climate Crisis 101, you get to hear me speaking the words that I put on the page. Apologies in advance if, one, you don't like what I'm saying, i.e. what I've written, and two, if you don't like hearing me say it out loud. While requiring the reader to watch and read a range of supporting works is an unusual thing for a book to do, it is indeed the way that university courses generally function, as the instructor assigns and gives context for various works. Not surprisingly, these works are often central to the course. In the humanities, for example, a course that did not reference additional works would be more than a little bit unusual. Just to be clear, for the UCSB students who are enrolled in the course, reading and watching these additional works is an absolute requirement of the course. To put it bluntly, you will be tested on them. But university courses go further, as they not only encourage the reading and viewing of material, but a discussion of it in the classroom. Certainly, in a traditional sense, a book is not a classroom experience. Moreover, a book does not contain an archive of various discussions initiated by the book itself. However, as this book is also a university course, it contains a classroom experience. Indeed, if you are enrolled in the UCSB course, you are required to take part in this experience by commenting on portions of this book, which, like everything else in Climate Crisis 101, has been posted to video lectures on YouTube. These comments then become part of this book. In other words, in addition to the required outside readings, Climate Crisis 101 is designed to encourage discussion of this material. This is, in fact, really a four-part process for students in the class. First, you read, see, and/or hear my framing of the documentary or reading. Second, you then read or watch the work at hand. Third, you read what other people thought about the work in the YouTube comments to my framing videos. Fourth, and finally, students share their own thoughts. Although the YouTube comments are not on the same web page with the primary course material, this archive should also be considered part of Climate Crisis 101. All of this is, importantly, public. Traditionally, much of academia has taken place behind closed doors. Even though we are now in a connected age, this is still the case at many universities. At UCSB, for example, most online class discussions take place behind a paywall, the password-protected wall in a Moodle-based environment known as Gaucho Space. As far as I'm concerned, this is problematic. There's no reason to keep this material from the public, especially given the urgency and severity of the climate crisis. Consequently, anyone who is interested can follow along with our class discussions, even years from now, as I have no intention of taking down the course archive. Given the size of this course, over 800 students, and the fact that nearly every student will be making multiple online comments, literally millions of words of commentary and discussions will be created by this course and archive. Okay, thank you.